I welcome you all to the module 10 of this course, and today's lecture is lecture number 26. So, module 10 we have already discussed. This is a module on specific interventions of positive psychology in the context of education and classroom teaching. And today's lecture will be focusing on school based positive psychology interventions. So, more specifically we will be focusing on certain interventions, evidence based interventions that have been carried out in the context of school context. So, this is the second lecture of this module, and overall it is lecture number 26. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture. So, the last lecture was also part of the same module, and this was the first lecture of this module. So, in the last lecture we discussed the concept of positive education. What is the meaning of positive education, and what are the main focus of positive education. We also discussed some of the broader theoretical framework that are used within the positive educations. These frameworks which can be directly used in the context of positive education. Then we at the end we discussed about a particular case study, how positive education have been implemented in a school. So, we gave an example of Geelong Grammar School case study to understand how this whole positive education program have been implemented in a school setup. So, these are the few things that we discussed in the last lecture. In today's lecture, we will be focusing on some of the more diverse aspects of positive education program and how they can be implemented in the school context. So, we will be focusing on positive psychology interventions for positive educations. We will focus on very specific school based interventions like mindfulness in school setups, character strengths in school setups, resilience in school setups, and positive relationship in schools. Last lecture was more about broader framework that can be used. In this lecture, our focus will be more on specific interventions and what are the research evidences associated with them. So, in that context, how they are different from the earlier lecture. So, let us start today's lecture. So, as we have already discussed the positive education in school, the main focus is on applying some of the principles of positive psychology within the school setup and curriculum to enhance students' well-being, in addition to all the traditional school curriculum and the teaching and learning that is going on. So, the focus is to make a holistic development of the student, not just typical academic curriculum that is given. Well-being of the student are also, the skills of well-being are also taught. Now, although the positive education is relatively new in the context because it came out with the development of positive psychology as a branch of psychology, and this is a relatively recent or new branch. Positive education emerged with that. Research have already demonstrated its successes in schools due to its alignment with the broader 21st century schooling idea. So, positive education became popular in the sense because this whole idea of holistic development of the children and focusing on the well-being is a broad idea within the 21st century schooling curriculum and so on. So, it very seamlessly merges with this whole concept of schooling itself. So, there was no any in terms of conceptually or theoretically there was no resistance and problem. Some researchers argued that schools are uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between positive psychology's goal of promoting human development and the institution that can facilitate that growth. Schools are the best place to implement positive psychology programs simply because this is where foundations of a human personality starts. During the school stages, the children all the things they learn about whatever the curriculum, apart from that they also as a human beings as a personality also that emerge out of this whole schooling system. So, this is the best place where we can implement a lot of these positive psychology programs. So, that is why schools are very important place where these positive psychology principles can be implemented. Now, why there is a need for well-being at schools? We all intuitively understand there is a lot of need for enhancing well-being within the schools, but let us see some of the specific reasons why it is important. Now, an interdisciplinary group of researchers from US and Canada, the organization is called the National Scientific Council on the Developing Child. In 2006, they stressed the importance of education in fostering well-being, which is defined as feeling good and functioning well, alongside the traditional academic skills. So, this underscores the need for schools for prioritizing emotional well-being and social capacity to prepare for the complex future. So, students are not obviously they are learning whatever academic skills are required, but when we talk about human life, academic skills are not enough. When they go out and when we need to prepare students for the future, they also need to be ready for the facing of life and challenges of life and the problems of life. So, their well-being is very important, because as a human being we face complex life situations around us. So, where just academic skills are not good enough, we need the skills of well-being and so on. So, that is the basic need why that is important. Now, today's student face a future marked by rapid technological changes, such as nowadays this whole artificial intelligence is changing this whole dynamics of job situations and education setup and so on. And these technologies are growing very fast and changing very fast, and one has to adapt quickly. Things are very rapidly changing around us, especially the technological changes that are happening, and with the changes of technology, whole social situations, job market situations, organizational situation, everything is changing. There are also environmental degradation, global warming, poverty, health pandemics, social and environmental challenges. So many things are rapidly happening around us, and in such dynamic world around us, we need to prepare students to face all these challenges and adapt with them, function in such situations in a better way. That is very important. So, that is where this whole positive education can help out. So, in the context of India, let us see some statistics. The National Mental Health Survey of India in 2015-16, they estimated from that survey that about 7.3% of the adolescents age 13 to 17 years of age group, they suffer from mental disorders, about 7.3% of such adolescents. This translates into approximately 8 to 11 million adolescents requiring mental health care at any given point. So, these surveys are basically they take samples. So, this may be very actually the numbers actually may be much more than that. So, this is a huge number when this percentage get translated into actual numbers, about 8 to 11 millions of adolescents, they actually require mental health care at any given point of time. The lifetime prevalence of mental disorders across all age groups in India is estimated about 13.7%. Now, this percent may look small, but when they get converted into such large population, the numbers are huge. So, according to this global burden of disease study in 2021, mental disorders affect approximately 14% of adolescents age 10 to 19 years in India. So, this is another survey. About 14% of adolescents are actually, the recent survey shows they are affected by some mental disorders, with 13.4% of boys and 13.9% of girls experiencing some form of mental disorders. So, this is a huge number, So, this is the age where they go to schools, and a lot of school setups and everything can influence their mind. So, these statistics are, so in the context of India, we have seen some statistics, and these statistics are equal in any other countries also. For example, we also have statistics for countries like Australia. So, in Australia, about 25% of young people aged 15 to 19 have a mental disorders. So, their percentage is more than us, but in actual number that may be less, and 1 in 3 experience moderate to high psychological distress. Specific issues in the context of Australia are depression, anxiety, body image concerns, substance abuse and so on. These are like common problems in every country. So, when you talk about mental problems and issues, these disorders comes at the top: depression, anxiety, substance abuse, body image concerns. This adolescence group has these issues are like at the top level, or the top concerns or mental issues are related to these things only. So, this scenario is almost same in everywhere. There is a large percentage of people in this particular age group, they are having lot of mental issues and psychological disorders, and they are not getting the right kind of help and the treatment that is required, and there is not awareness about that. To address these rising mental health issues, it is crucial to equip youth with resilience. So, it is very important that they are also trained in the school setup itself, so that they could prevent these issues or at least take care of them, have some understanding and awareness about that. So, they need the concept of resilience is very important, concept of hope, higher order cognitive skills, social skills, emotional skills, to lead a more meaningful life and so on. So, these skills are also equally important, otherwise they will not be able to productively function in the society after that. So, that foundation has to be built in the school itself. So, these positive psychology interventions are highlighted as a means to support all these social emotional skills, or building a holistic development of a student. We need this kind of intervention in the school itself. So, that is the basically why that is needed. Now, in the context of positive education, we have already discussed in the last lecture also certain frameworks that are generally used in the context of positive education. A lot of these are related to positive psychology concepts. So, these positive psychology interventions, the main aim is to cultivate positive emotions, behaviors, positive thought processes, and are grounded in the various theories like Seligman's PERMA model, which focuses on various ingredients of well-being and so on. We have already discussed about that. Now, unlike initiatives that reduce negative factors, a lot of initiatives that are done in the schools, so which are related to reduce the negative factors like anti-bullying programs, or programs which are just trying to cut the negative influences. They are okay, they are one part of the story, but we need to also build certain positive qualities within them. That is also very important. Just cutting negative things may not work. So, positive psychology interventions build positive factors also, apart from cutting the negative factors and so on. So, research shows that well-being enhances academic performance. For instance, a meta-analysis by Derlek and colleagues in 2011 found that students in social and emotional learning programs scored 11% higher on achievement test and so on. So, if we take care of the well-being of the student, emotional, social well-being, that will also enhance their academic performance also. So, it is in a win-win situation. So, that is why it is very important in that context, and positive psychology can contribute in this direction. And now, let us look into some of the school-based positive psychology interventions. So, in this lecture, we will focus on some school-based intervention that use positive psychology to foster student well-being and academic performance by focusing on positive emotions, resilience, character strengths and so on. So, in this lecture, we will discuss on interventions, specific interventions that are based on documented impact on school engagement, performance and well-being. So, these are evidence based intervention, because the research has found these can contribute significantly to promoting well-being and so on. So, these interventions aim to address both academic success and student well-being, aligning with the goal of 21st century education. So, they focus on both, because enhancing well-being also enhances performance and academic performance also. So, let us look into some specific such interventions. One such intervention is called mindfulness in the school setup. So, mindfulness, we have already discussed, a whole module was focused on that mindfulness and flow. There we discussed the details and the conceptual details of mindfulness and the practices of mindfulness. We have explained all the details in that earlier module. Here we will not focus on specific conceptual clarity on mindfulness. We will focusing on how this can be, what are the evidences in terms of how this can be implemented in the schools, and what possible outcomes from the research. So, mindfulness, as we already discussed, is about, it is defined as kind of awareness that arises when you paying deliberate non-judgment attention to the present moment. So, mindfulness is about becoming more conscious, paying attention on the present moment, and you suspend the judgmental thought processes. You do not judge anything, do not think. Those whole ruminative thought processes are reasons for all the negative thought processes, and all the unnecessary suffering that human being experiences is because of we do not have control over thought processes. It goes wild. One thought leads to other thought, especially the destructive and negative emotions. So, mindfulness can break those patterns, and how they break it? By becoming more conscious in the present moment, and just to pay attention to the present moment. And it is done through certain, like one can start with the focusing on the breathing and so on. So, we have talked about all the details. So, when you become more conscious and pay attention to things which are in the present moment, your unnecessary, the automatic, ruminative, unconscious thought processes gets slowly their frequency decreases, and that is a very peaceful experience and enhances happiness and so on. So, this became very popular because this has mindfulness have been found to be helpful for all kinds of psychological problems and so on, provided you do it in the right way. and a lot of research evidence are available for its contribution to well-being and so on. So, in educational settings, mindfulness is increasingly recognized for its potential to enhance attention. So, because when you practice mindfulness, you train your attention. So, and for getting success in any aspect of your life, attention is important. Without attention, you cannot learn anything. And one of the major challenges that students face is that they are not able to pay attention, and because of that their learning capacities are hindered and so on. So, mindfulness helps you to learn to pay attention, enhance attention, concentration and self-regulation, which are all important aspects of contemporary educational goals. People are better able to regulate their emotions, they are able to pay attention, their ability to focus on things also enhances. So, all this can improve academic performance and also able to regulate emotion. In that sense, it will enhance your well-being also. So, conceptually in terms of other setup, mindfulness has shown lot of promise and lot of benefits, but in terms of integrating this long structured program in the schools, there may be certain challenges, particularly the time commitment required for traditional mindfulness based stress reduction program. It is a long, very long program, it needs weeks of training and so on. So, those program may not be feasible in many school setup and so on. However, shorter taster sessions have shown promises in introducing student to mindfulness, helping them learn, direct their attention and integrate mindfulness into daily routines. However, these short term sessions on mindfulness have been integrated widely in various schools, and they have found to be a lot, at least helping students in terms of paying attention and learning them, focusing on things and so on, and it could be very easily integrated in the school curriculum, short sessions and so on. So, this school based mindfulness programs, such as certain programs were developed which are specifically based on for school curriculum based. One is like Mind Up, Inner Kids and Learning to Breathe have been developed and implemented globally, often incorporating creative exercise to engage young people. So, these are designed for young children, adolescents, certain mindfulness short programs were developed for school curriculum like Mind Up, Inner Kid, Learning to Breathe and so on. All these have been implemented successfully in various school setups. So, these programs aim to cultivate present moment awareness, which is the main aspect of that you come to the present moment, because mind all the time roams around the past and future, or unconsciously thinking about something which may not have much relevance. Obviously, mind is necessary for solving problems and so on, that is not the problem, but most of the time unconsciously mind wanders around everywhere and we are not able to pay attention and so on. So, you become more conscious and directs your attention to the present moment awareness. You do not judge things when you are in that moment. So, that enhances non-reactivity, you do not react automatically unconsciously to the situations of life. You have much better control, which helps in emotion regulation, reduces maladaptive coping strategies and enhance well-being. So, all these programs have found to have lot of benefit in terms of, even if they are short term programs, when they are done consistently can have a very long term impact on students and so on. Even neuroscientific research supports the benefit of mindfulness, showing structural functioning changes in the brain. When people do it continuously, there are certain changes in the brain itself happens, which are like positive changes related to improve attention, emotional integration and so on. So, while studies on mindfulness impact on academic performance are limited, a lot of mindfulness studies have been done in various contexts, but in schools relatively less studies are conducted. But preliminary evidence suggests positive effects on cognitive function. It helps to improve their thought processes, emotion regulation, social competence and so on. So, some evidence, at least recent evidence, shows they can be beneficial in certain dimensions. Improvements in language and study skills among students also practicing transcendental meditation. Certain meditative practices also have shown improvement in language and study skills. Mindfulness practices have been linked to better emotion regulation, which is crucial for academic success and well-being. So, these are some of the evidences that researchers found in the context of mindfulness when they are implemented in the school setup and so on. So, in summary, mindfulness offers a valuable tool which can enhance attention ability, which can help us to regulate emotions, social skills in students and benefit academic performance. So, these are all important goals of education, So, and this all can be enhanced through mindfulness. Obviously, we need more research in that direction, and more structured programs need to be developed for school setup and so on. The next interventions that a lot of research shows has a lot of promise in terms of school setup is character strength in school setting. We have discussed the framework in the earlier lecture, but here we will be focusing more on as an intervention and their evidences. So, let us talk about character strength in schools. So, strengths we have already discussed is about certain intrinsically characteristics or certain traits of people, which may include thoughts, feelings, and which are like desirable, morally desirable traits and so on. And research shows they can promote well-being, positive relationships, goal achievement and so on. While most of the research on strengths has focused on adults, strength can also be identified and nurtured in children in right perspective in schools also, but we have less research in the context of children and so on. So, positive psychology research emphasizes that using existing strength in new ways is more effective for enhancing well-being than developing entirely new strengths. So, people have already a lot of strengths within all of them. Every human being have certain strengths, character strengths. So, if you know about them, develop them, it is much more easier because it is already within that person. You need to only refine them rather than developing a completely new character and so on. So, that is what one of the benefits of character strength training is, that people have already a lot of strengths. They may be dormant, people may not be aware of them. So, we can identify them, train them in terms of identifying, becoming more aware of their strengths, which a lot of questionnaires and assessment tools can do that, and refine them and use them more in the new ways in their day-to-day life in terms of getting the most out of them. So, working from strength rather than focusing on just weaknesses has shown to improve learning. So, because when you talk about weaknesses, everybody has also weaknesses, but when you ask them to improve their weaknesses and so on, people generally do not want to do that, and there is a less motivation to do that. So, when people are not good at something, they become defensive about them. They do not want to acknowledge that they are not good at that, or even if they acknowledge, there is no motivation because you are not good at that. So, working from weakness is always difficult, but when you have certain strengths, it is much more easier because you are automatically intrinsically motivated to do that because you are good at something. So, no one needs to push you and motivate you and so on. Motivation is required when you are not good at something, then it is very difficult because you do not get necessary energy and motivation to do that. People become defensive about them. So, working from one strength is much better in terms of enhancing learning, performance, motivation, satisfaction, feeling of mastery and competence and so on. Obviously, one can work towards weaknesses, but focusing from the strength perspective has a lot of much more benefit in that context. Researchers like Wagner and Ruch found that character strengths like perseverance, self-regulation, prudence, social intelligence, hope are strongly correlated with positive classroom behaviors. So, certain strengths are very important in the context of classroom behaviors and performance. Some of them are listed here. A positive classroom climate, as highlighted by the pro-social classroom model, is closely linked to students' well-being and academic success. So, a lot of these are actually related to academic success also, some of these character strengths. In youth, strengths like persistent, honesty, hope are linked to lower aggression, lower anxiety, lower depression, and predict academic performance beyond IQ level. So, academic performance is also positively influenced by a lot of these character strengths. Even certain character strengths like self-discipline, in one research shows in 8th grade they outperformed IQ in predicting academic success. So, self-discipline was more important in terms of even better than IQ in terms of predicting academic success, and curiosity in 4th grade predicted academic achievement in 6th grade. So, certain character strengths like curiosity, self-discipline, these were found to have very good impact in terms of academic performance also. Now, let us review some of the specific school based program in character strengths, how some of these interventions were done in schools actually, and there are some research evidences to that. So, the Strathaven positive psychology program in US, this particular program is focused on character strengths. It teaches students to identify and use their character strength through 20 to 25 lessons based on VIA framework that we discussed earlier. So, this is a particular program that is intervention used in the schools. So, in US certain schools have used this program, where the certain lessons are taught to them, and the main idea is to identify different strengths that students have and how to use them more and more. So, that was the idea. Study by Seligman and colleague in 2009 with 347 9-year students found that participants in this program reported greater school enjoyment and engagement, while teachers noted improvement in curiosity, love for learning, creativity and social skills. However, no significant change in depression or anxiety was observed, but certain things they found improved when this program was implemented in the schools. They found the student reported more enjoyment and more engagement in the school curriculum. Teachers also noted they become more curious, the love for learning, creativity, social skills, a lot of these things improved. In Australia, another strength based program was done here by Madden and colleague 2010. They evaluated a strength based coaching program for 5th grade boys using VIA framework. Over 8 sessions, students identified their strengths, set goals and wrote letter from the future. So, these were some of the activities they did, and the posted results showed increase in hope and engagement, indicating program effectiveness. So, they found this program also had certain positive impact on the students, like their engagement also increased, their hope for the future also increased and so on. In another study, Austin compared student in a 6-week Gallup strength program, which we have already discussed earlier. Gallup strength program with a control group. Student in the strength program, where strength was taught to them. Gallup strength program is another framework where also certain work related and professional based strengths are taught, or they identified and they refined in that context. Reported higher academic expectations when they were taught about this thing, higher academic expectations, self-efficacy and motivation, demonstrated benefit of integrating character strength in the school curriculum. So, this study shows that character strength can be taught to schools if proper programs are implemented, which can improve social skills, engagement, hope, academic performance and so on. So, there is a lot of promise in this direction if this can be implemented properly. Obviously, there are challenges to that, which we have also discussed in the last lecture. Then the resilience in school setup, how certain programs that focuses on the resilience have been implemented in the school setup. Let us look at that. Now, resilience, again we have discussed about this concept of resilience and the research in resilience, interventions of resilience in the earlier modules. Here the focus is on the school setup, how certain programs have been implemented. So, we will focus only on evidence based interventions, not the concept details, everything is there in the earlier modules. So, resilience is mostly about what we talked about is that it is an ability to bounce back from certain adversities of life. When something goes wrong in one's life, how quickly you can come back to your normal functioning level, rather than getting overburdened by the problems of life. So, that ability is called resilience, and schools can teach resilience to students with certain programs, because this is a very important quality, because we are all faced with different problems in life, and if you are able to adapt to them, quickly come back, then we will be able to function in much better ways. So, schools that deliberately design positive psychology interventions to build resilience in students can significantly impact their well-being and learning outcomes, because it is directly related to one's functioning level. In the context of research, there are two popular curriculum based resilience programs are available. One is PEN resilience program, which we little bit discussed in the last lecture also. Some of the major component of this program we have discussed. I will just here talk about some evidence here only, because program we have discussed in the last lecture. Another program called You Can Do It, YCDI. These are specific programs that focuses on building resilience in the school context. And both of these have shown to reduce distress, improve well-being and promote learning. So, we will see little bit more evidences on that. Now, PEN resiliency program, what is this program and the modules of this program we have discussed in the last lecture. It is widely implemented curriculum designed to enhance student resilience. So, basic details we have already discussed in the last lecture. Here it teaches skills such as cognitive reframing, assertiveness, decision making, coping strategies, creative brainstorming and relaxation. It is a very elaborate program, which is a kind of limitation also because it may include lot of cost and so on. So, this program has been used within students age 8 to 15 in countries including United States, UK, Australia, China, Portugal and so on. In various countries have implemented this program in the schools and have found lot of benefits. And a review of 17 studies involving over 2000 students found that this PEN resiliency program significantly reduced symptoms of depression, hopelessness, anxiety compared to control groups. So, this is not based on just one school, many schools across globe have shown the benefit of this program. And the result shows the benefits are actually long lasting, not just temporary benefits, with improvements in well-being over 2 years at year 2 and 31 months follow-ups. Even when the follow-ups are done after 2 years, the results were still there, the impact was there. So, these are some of the evidences associated with PEN resiliency program. Another program that is also focused on enhancing resilience is You Can Do It program, YCDI program. So, You Can Do It program is a social emotional learning and resilience building framework developed by Dr. Michelle E. Bernard. So, it is widely used in schools to promote student well-being, resilience and achievement by targeting cognitive and social emotional learning. So, it focuses on social learning, social skills, emotional skills, cognitive skills, in terms of enhancing them for the students. It focuses on teaching social emotional resiliency skills such as confidence, persistence, organization, interpersonal skills and so on. So, different skills which are important for navigating life, getting success in life and so on, all these skills are also taught in this program. This program focuses on positive thinking patterns taught to social emotional learning. For example, how to think positively, constructively, that is also taught in this program. For example, some of the examples like you can do it, it builds confidence, I try hard and don't give up, builds persistence, it's okay to make mistakes, it builds emotional resilience, I work well with others, builds getting along, I plan my work and use my time wisely, builds organization. These are some of the examples how you can teach student to think in the proper direction. So, just changing thought processes can build confidence, persistence, emotional resilience, because these are all related to how you think about things. So, if you can teach them properly how to think constructively, a lot of these qualities can automatically develop. So, this is what this program does. This program also addresses negative habits of the mind. Mostly a lot of people develop negative habits in the mind, which actually creates an obstacle in their path to success. For example, thoughts like I must be perfect, I can't do anything right, it's too hard for me. These are things that a student or a people learn from the society from their childhood onwards. When they are not able to do something, they develop a thought process, I can do it. So, this thought process become very unconscious and that deep down, and they always creates obstacles in the path of success. So, in this program they try to teach how to modify this thought into more constructive thoughts and so on. So, it teaches student how to replace these thoughts and replace them with more helpful self-talk and so on. So, in a study by Barnard and Walton in 2011, they compared a 5th grade student from 6 schools which implemented this program, You Can Do It program, YCDI, which included 349 students with students from 6 control schools, and they also took 6 control schools where this program was not implemented. So, 6 schools where this program was implemented and 6 schools where this program was not implemented, it was compared. That is called control group where it was not implemented. And so they assessed the impact of this program using something called as a student attitude to school survey, where researcher assessed well-being, teaching and learning baseline 1 year later and 1 year later. So, baseline before the program was introduced, these measures were taken, and this program was introduced, and after 1 year when this was implemented, again they took measures whether there is a change in the scores of well-being and so on. What they found, students in YCDI schools where this program was implemented showed significant improvement in morale, stimulating learning, schools connectedness, motivation, learning confidence, peer connectedness, classroom behavior, safety along with reduced distance. Where they found control schools only reported improvement in classroom behavior and safety. So, when they compared to the control schools, they found schools where YCDS was implemented, so many positive emotional and social improvement have happened to the students, where such things was absent in the control schools where this was not implemented, just to make a comparison. So, these studies at least demonstrate that these resilient building programs like this PEN resiliency program or you can do it program there is a lot of potential in these programs to enhance students resilience, emotional skills, social skills and so on. So, there is a possibility that this can really make a lot of positive changes, provided we can implement them properly and so on. The challenges and other thing we have discussed in the last lecture, that for implementing such program obviously there are a lot of challenges in the schools which can create problem. Then comes positive relationship in schools. This also plays very important role because a lot of this emotional well-being comes from relationships. So, let us look into some of the studies that looked into the positive relationship aspects in the schools in terms of intervention. So, this positive relationship, again we have a separate full module on positive relationship. So, I will not go into the conceptual details and theories and so on. Here only focus is on context of school setups and so on. When we talk about positive relationship, we are talking about supportive interactions and cooperation with both teachers and students. So, relationship includes relationship with the teachers, relationship with the students, and what is the dynamics of that relationship. So, if it is positive, we are talking about this positive relationship, and this is very important for well-being because a lot of our well-being is actually derived from relationships, because we are social animals, we connect with people, and that gives a large percentage of well-being actually comes from our relationships. Research by Diner in 1995 found that quality of social relationship is the only factor that consistently predict happiness across culture. So, Diner found that this is the most important factor across all cultures in terms of happiness of people is derived from the relationships across all cultures. This is what they found. A study by Diner and Seligman 2002 also found that on student they found over 2 months revealed that happiness levels were closely linked to coping with stress, which was enhanced through social support and so on. Because relationship is also important in terms of coping with difficulties also. When you have supportive network, people help you to deal with problems of your life. So, you can face challenges, stressful situation and so on in much better ways because you have a support system. So, this prosocial behavior such as acts of kindness increases well-being not only through social support, but also by fostering positive emotion and happiness. So, positive relationship has also this helping behavior and so on, all these things also enhances well-being and so on. So, research shows positive relationship improve both individual and collective well-being, which in turn enhances problem solving and learning. So, these are different findings which shows the significance of it. Theories like self-determination theory highlights that well-being is supported by fulfilling 3 basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence and connectedness or relatedness. So, we will talk about self-determination theory in detail in the next lecture, because this is one theory that looks into also relationship aspect and how this can increase motivation in our life. So, I will not discuss it here because the next lecture is actually dedicated to this theory only. So, this theory also looks into, it can explain why positive relationship is important in one's life. So, we will look into that in the next lecture where we will look into other aspects to it. So, positive relationships and pro-social behavior such as act of kindness meet these needs by being self-determined. So, this is related to this theory, I will not focus it here. So, however, when you talk about relationship in the context of school, there is a lot of paradoxical things. You cannot just look at relationship very clearly in a very straightforward manner, because cooperation is okay, is valued in the school setup, but the competitive grading system implicitly prioritize individual success over collective well-being, because there is a sense of competitive aspects in the school setups where students compete with each other. So, they are this whole positive relationship aspect may not be so straightforwardly, you cannot just preach that, because this whole setup is like, there is an explicitly there is a concept of grading system where students compete with each other. So, there may be possibility of competition rather than cooperation. So, that aspect one has to deal with in a very sensitive way. So, students often receive mixed messages, understanding that their success may be at the expense of others. So, in the context of school, if you see, if one student is successful or getting a better grade, it may be at the expense of another student, because another one was got less than you. So, you are getting a better grade. So, it is always that sense of competition is there in the context of school, because of the kind of system that we have in the school. So, that is the main challenge in the context of positive relationship in the school setup. However, certain schools and certain systems of school try to use certain models of cooperative learning, where competition is not there, everybody cooperates to learn with each other. Certain experiments were done in terms of enhancing this positive relationship. One such concept that was developed is called as jigsaw classroom. Although it was not very widely used till now, but certain schools tried to do that. So, we will look into this concept of cooperative learning, where it is the learning is not competitive with one another, but cooperative learning system can be promoted by things like jigsaw classroom teaching. That was used and implemented to address a lot of these issues of conflict within the schools and within the peers and so on. We will look into this, how it is done. So, many studies have shown that cooperative learning promotes acceptance of others, cooperation and prosocial behavior and so on. So, this has certain benefits obviously, when the learning system itself is cooperative rather than competitive. So, let us look into this whole concept of jigsaw classroom that is based on the model of cooperative learning. This was developed for a particular reason. It was developed by Elliot Aronson in 1971 in the University of Texas, Austin. The focus was to promote collaboration by making students interdependent in achieving a common goal. The focus was in such classrooms that students become interdependent on each other to learn something, to learn a common goal of learning. So, everybody has to depend on others. So, there needs to be a cooperation rather than competition to reach a goal of learning some topics or something like that. So, it was originally developed to reduce racial conflicts in the schools, because there are many schools where students from different background they come, especially in the West, where let us say black student, white student. So, there was always this racial conflicts. To reduce that conflict, this concept was actually introduced in the initially to promote cooperation among the students and promote positive interdependence on each other. Especially in desegregated schools, means schools where people from different backgrounds and different race come together to study. So, the technique is now widely used to foster collaboration, comprehension and harmony in classroom of all level. Now, this has also been now implemented in the general setups. Initial purpose was to reduce racial conflict. So, the core idea of jigsaw technique is that students work in small interdependent group. So, the student has to learn in a group setup. Small groups are made in a class and they had to collectively learn with each other, with each member becoming an expert of a specific aspect of a topic. So, we will talk about it in a stepwise manner how it is done, then it will become much more clear. So, these experts, each student become an expert of a topic and then they learn about the topic, and this expert then teach their peers, then they teach others, ensuring that all group members has to become expert on one topic. So, everybody has to very engage, there has to be engagement with everybody, and then in order to comprehensively understand the material or the topic. So, how it is done? Let us see more stepwise how it is done. First, what is done in the jigsaw classroom? The students are divided in small groups called home groups. So, each group may include students of 4 to 6 students in one group. So, let us say a class has 20 students or 30 students. So, small groups of 4 or 5 students or 4 to 6 students are divided into small groups. So, first this is how it is done, students are divided into small groups, then assign each member a unique subtopic of a broader topic. So, each student in the group gets a different subtopic to learn and later teach their group. For example, the topic is, let us say, continents. Let us say in a school we have a chapter on continents in the world, so different continents. Now, each group, so each student will learn a subtopic from that topic. So, the topic is continent, subtopic can be Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America, whatever it is. So, there are different continents. So, in each group, each student will take one topic. So, let us say there are 5 students in the group. Student 1 will learn about Asia, student 2 will learn about Africa, student 3 will learn about Europe, student 4 will learn about North America, student 5 learn about South America. Everybody has to learn about a different subtopic of a broader topic. So, teacher will assign that to each student. Now, the next, assign expert topics. Now, what is done next? Each student focuses on the subtopic, whatever that is assigned to them. They are responsible for learning it well and becoming expert on that part. So, the student has to become expert on that topic. So, for example, student 1 is given Asia, they have to become expert on all the concepts related to Asia. For example, here the student 3 is responsible for Europe. If you see here, student 3 was given Europe. So, that student will learn everything about Europe. He or she must learn about Europe's geography, culture, population, landmark, whatever it is. In that textbook, whatever is given, they have to learn that. Then what happens? There is an expert group meetings. Student with the same topic from different groups meet in the expert group. So, what happens? Now, this for example, so this is group 1, let us say this is group 1. Similarly, there will be group 2 with student 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Similarly, the student 1 will have Asia and so on, Asia like this, Africa, same topic will be given to the different group also. So, Europe like this. Let us say there will be group 3, student 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. So, in every group there will be student 3 who will have the same topic, Europe. So, in the expert group what they will do, student from all the groups who have the same subtopic, let us say student 3 of group 1, student 3 of group 2, student 3 of group 4 or group 3, they all have learned about Europe, and all these students from all the groups of the same subtopic, they will meet together, that is called as an expert group meeting. So, all these students have become expert of the same subtopic. So, that is called expert group meeting. So, here they will again, because everybody has learned the same topic, so they will discuss again further to enrich their understanding. Everybody has learned about Europe here. So, they will again further discuss each expert from the groups. So, they will discuss, research, clarify the topic together, sometimes using teacher provided resources. For example, here all students who were assigned Europe from group A, B, C meet together to study Europe. This is like all collaborative learning. So, every student may add something new and they will all learn in a much better way. So, this is the step 4. Then what happens? This student again return to their original group. This expert group meeting has done. Now, everybody has refined their understanding much more, not just individual learning, learning from other student also in the same topic, subtopic. This student then return to their original jigsaw classroom and teach. Now, this student will return to their original group and teaches the topic to the group, and rest of the group listens, takes notes and asks questions. So, this student, let us say student 3 became an expert of Europe. This student 3 in every group, they become expert, and then when they met again, they further refined it and they again return back to their original group. Now, they will teach about Europe through their original group, and others will learn and listen and ask question and so on. Similarly, all the other students in the group, let us say student 1, 2, they also learned some different topic, they also met again similarly, and they will come back to their original topic and they will teach them. So, this is what the student collaboratively can learn, and it is much more engaging process. And all the topics, this is how student will learn and teach. Obviously, the teacher will assist in all the processes. So, the last step is group integration and discussion. After all the members have shared the groups, now understand the full topic, because now everybody has learned and taught to their own groups about all the continents. So, student 1 will teach Asia, student 2 will teach some Africa and so on. So, when they meet together, they have learned, understood all the subtopics of a topic. Teacher can have student complete a group task, poster, quiz, classroom. Teacher can further facilitate the process and so on. So, in this process, it is more of a collaborative process, cooperative process, more engaging process. Obviously, this may be more time taking and so on, it may have its own challenges, but this was originally done to reduce conflicts among the races and make students interdependent on each other, so that they cooperate more and so on. So, there is a lot of benefit of such obviously cooperative learning method like Jigsaw have been extensively documented. Research shows that compared to traditional competitive or individualistic approach, cooperative learning enhances students' achievement, improves attitude towards the subject, strengthens peer relationships and increase retention rates and so on. Because students, they themselves are engaged, they have to learn, they have more responsibility. Now, it is not like passive process, teacher is teaching and student is just taking notes and so on. So, the variation of this Jigsaw technique, certain variations were done in and have been implemented in different contexts, have been effectively employed in undergraduate courses across diverse disciplines such as statistics, philosophy, biology, geology, language courses, psychology, chemistry and so on. Lots of places this have been with certain variations, obviously depending on the classroom size and so on, certain variations can be done and have been implemented successfully in various setups. So, reported benefits about basically what happens here, students, they themselves get a lot of responsibility. When responsibility is given to them, it is now they have to be engaged, they cannot just take it lightly because they have to teach their groups. So, it enhances responsibility, greater engagement, more frequent questioning, dependence on the peer, everything, actually all these are positive things in terms of cooperation and so on. So, by practicing self and peer teaching, students deepen their understanding of the material and enhance their communications. It also helps them to communication skills also enhance because they have to teach now. So, communication skill also enhances and so on. Additionally, the method ensures that every student contribution is essential. Now, no one can just sit idly, everybody has to contribute because everybody has to learn a topic. So, this engagement becomes automatically active in these processes. So, generally this method promotes both academic success and development of critical interpersonal skills and so on. Now, overall now we have talked about certain specific concepts or interventions that evidence based intervention we have discussed now. Now, cultivating positive education in school obviously has certain challenges which we have discussed in the last class also. That now what can we do in terms of actually effectively integrating lot of these concepts in the schools? What can be done? What should be the ways in terms of going ahead? So, Waters 2012 provided 4 key factors, I think, which are very significant factors which can be looked at in terms of implementing this positive education in schools. One is extending positive psychology topics into traditional academic disciplines. So, a lot of these topics can be actually included in the curriculum itself. That is the best way, because then there will not be like additional burden of all these things. So, this integrating lot of these positive psychology concepts that we discussed, like gratitude, resilience, character strengths in the existing subject like arts, language and health, can enhance student well-being while maintaining academic rigor. Now, if it becomes a part of academic curriculum, now it becomes much more easier to kind of implement them. So, this approach will ensure positive education becomes seamless. Otherwise, if it is given an additional task, it will be very difficult to implement it. So, it should be integrated in the curriculum itself. That is one way to integrate it. Second is one has to use an whole school approach. It should not be just based on classroom teaching. Using a school wide approach is another important aspect. So, implementing positive education initiative across the entire school should be there, rather than just isolated classroom teaching. So, that can create a cohesive supportive environment and student will learn it when they apply it in other context also. Just teaching them probably will not, it will be just a conceptual thing. So, a school-wide approach ensures that all students and staff benefit from the principles of positive psychology, fostering culture and so on. We have already talked about in the last class this Geelong Grammar School, how it was implemented. It was an whole school approach. So, that is a very good example how a school-wide approach can be done. So, their school initially the staff and teachers learned it, then they taught it to the student, and then it was implemented in the culture of the schools, like in the assemblies, in the school notice board and so on. So, it was implemented everywhere. So, that is the very good examples of how school-wide approach was implemented. Then it becomes much easier because the student not only just learn the concept, they also apply it. Using strategic framework to guide rollout. So, that is also very important. So, adopting structured framework to introduce the sustained positive psychology initiative can help schools systematically implement. So, it is very important that systematically you implement it, structured way, step by step. Maybe everything cannot be implemented at a time. So, structured, more systematically, sustained, step by step things can be much more doable, and one can evaluate structured wise, step by step, how it is doing and so on. One can focus on what is the problem coming out in terms of achieving goals and so on. So, this strategic planning is also very important. Then the most important thing is support of role of larger educational system. This is very important. If larger education system itself is not supportive, then people will not be able to implement it. Some school will implement, then after some time they will just forget about it, because this whole policy is not in sync with that. So, that is very important that larger education system should have a policy towards that. Broader education system including policy maker, educational authorities can provide resources, training, legitimate. They are the one who develop textbook also, they can integrate that and instruct schools to conduct workshops and so on. If they show willingness, obviously school has to follow that. So, that top down approach also has to be very important. See, the collaboration with larger systems ensure that positive education is prioritized and sustained across multiple schools and region. Otherwise, it will become just a local phenomena of some schools only which are financially great, financially doing great. They will be able to do this, other schools will not be able to do that. So, the larger education system policy makers has to show the willingness towards that. The need for it is obviously research have beyond doubt show that it is important and needed, but that implementation part also has to be supported by the larger education systems, then only it can be implemented. So, these 4 factors can be highlighted, focused on in terms of how to implement all these positive education programs and intervention in the schools. School can effectively promote well-being and holistic development of the students. So, these are some of the things about certain interventions of positive education which are derived from positive psychology can be implemented in the school setups, and the challenges also we have discussed through these lectures. We have one more lecture of this module which will focus on more specifically on motivation and so on. So, with this I stop here. Thank you.